10 minutes before the wedding, I discovered a strange new ability. I could read minds, but it wasn't just anyone's thoughts I could hear. It was my husband to be, Dylan. As I stood in the dressing room, I heard him say, "The wedding's about to start, and I'm so nervous." Startled, I stared at him. Just as I was about to tease him, I noticed his serious expression. Was I imagining things? Maybe my nerves were playing tricks on me. Before I could convince myself otherwise, I heard Dylan's voice again, this time more troubling. If Stella hadn't turned me down last night, I wouldn't be marrying Nora. If she weren't so easy to control, I would have run long ago. I froze, watching him closely, searching his face for clues. The name Stella wasn't unfamiliar. Dylan's childhood sweetheart. Their relationship had always seemed strictly platonic, with clear boundaries, so I had never doubted them. But now, his words made my chest tighten. Was he secretly in love with her all along? I thought back to the beginning of our relationship. Dylan and I met at the start of my freshman year. Ignoring advice to pack lightly, I had brought 5 oversized bags. Moving them was a nightmare, even with the help of upperclassmen. Then Dylan showed up, effortlessly carrying the heavy luggage while cracking jokes. At the dorm entrance, he grinned and said, "Next time, pack less. I want to meet you, not risk my life." His charm made me laugh, and from that moment we became inseparable. But now, standing here in my wedding dress, I couldn't understand how Dylan could love Stella yet still pursue me. My troubled expression must have been obvious because Dylan approached, feigning concern. "Nora, are you okay? You look pale." As I gazed into his eyes, I heard his true thoughts. This woman is insufferable. Does she think the world revolves around her? Swallowing my anger, I forced a casual tone. "Dylan, why do you think Stella didn't show up? Aren't you two good friends?" His smile faltered. "It's our wedding day. Whether she's here or not doesn't matter," he said dismissively. I nodded, secretly plotting my next move. With our families already gathered, it wasn't plausible to cancel the wedding now. My plan was to go through the ceremony and confront Dylan later. But before I could act, the dressing room door burst open. Stella, out of breath and wearing a wedding dress, rushed in. "Dylan?" she said, her voice trembling. "You told me you'd always wait for me. Do your words still hold true?" My eyebrows shot up. Perfect, I thought. This was my chance to cut ties with Dylan. Feigning hurt, I turned to him with tearful eyes. "Dylan, didn't you say our wedding was today and that it didn't matter whether she came?" Caught between two women, Dylan's vanity swelled. His thoughts betrayed him. I really am irresistible. I rolled my eyes inwardly, disgusted. On the surface, I remained calm. "Dylan, our families are outside. If you call off the wedding now, your reputation will be in shambles. My family's company is involved in nearly every industry in the city. Do you think we'd let you get away with this?" Unaware of my family's influence, Dylan looked annoyed. "It's just a wedding. Brides can be replaced." Suppressing my fury, I made a call. "Cousin, since the bride is changing, you should charge them the venue fee." My cousin, who owned the hotel, stormed in. Glaring at Dylan, she barked, "Do you even know who my cousin is? If you break off this engagement, I'll make your life miserable." I stopped her with a calm hand. "It's fine. Business is business. Charge them the standard rate. For this venue, that's 650,000 yen." Dylan's composure cracked. "You expect me to pay that much? Nora, your family is just average. Stop pretending." My cousin flashed her work ID, rolling her eyes. "You've been freeloading off us, bringing strangers to eat and drink at our expense. This is just your share of the bill. If you can't pay, leave." Dylan's face turned red with anger. "Nora, I was confused. Let's forget this and proceed with the wedding." Fearing I might relent, my cousin stepped in. "Sir, if you can't pay, I'll call security." Stella, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. "It's okay, Dylan. I don't care about material things." Her words only deepened my resolve. Dylan and Stella could have each other, but not without consequences. I chuckled when Dylan suggested switching hotels, barely containing my laughter. He wasn't trying to take care of Stella. He was feeding his own ego. Inside, Dylan was already cursing Stella, revealing how shallow their relationship truly was. His family constantly bragged about his status as a top student from the city. If he left this hotel humiliated, it would be the talk of the town by morning. With no other choice, Dylan approached me with a sour expression. Nora, I was being foolish earlier. Please don't take it seriously. Let's continue with the wedding as planned. I smiled and clapped my hands. There's no need. Your great love shouldn't be hindered by someone like me. I'll step aside. At that moment, my cousin called for the hotel's security team to throw Dylan's family out. Furious, Dylan's mother stormed over. Nora, I've always thought you were unworthy of my son. Now I see you have the heart of a snake. You're canceling the wedding and blaming my son? Do you think our family is so easy to bully? I shook my head calmly. Auntie, let's be clear. Your son's unresolved feelings are the reason for this mess. Look, another woman has shown up in a wedding dress. If I don't leave now, I'll only be betrayed again in the future. Speechless, Dylan's mother collapsed dramatically to the floor, wailing, Everyone judge for yourselves. My son is getting married, but the bride's family is trying to ruin it. We've even given them money and now they want to leave. Return the money and compensate us for my son's time, youth, and the wedding expenses. I smiled, seeing an opportunity. Turning to the room, I projected the dressing room's surveillance footage onto a screen. Dylan's mother's face turned pale as the evidence played. Auntie, now you can't say I wronged your son, can you? Dylan's relatives began murmuring. Who would have thought? Dylan seems so decent, but he's been living a double life. And the bride's family, aren't they wealthy? This hotel is part of a national chain, and it's all theirs. The realization struck like lightning. Dylan's family, who had assumed we were ordinary, now looked ashamed. Dylan's mother stumbled to her feet, smiling nervously. Nora, I spoke out of anger earlier. None of those women mean anything. You're the only daughter-in-law I recognize. I laughed inwardly. Auntie, you just mentioned compensating us. Let's calculate. My family provided a car worth 5 million yen as part of the dowry. Your son has been using it so you can return its value. As for the 1 million I spent renovating the house, I'd appreciate it if you repaid that soon. Otherwise, expect a court summons. Dylan approached with a dark expression, grabbing my arm. Nora, do you have to humiliate my family like this? I shook off his hand. Your family embarrassed me first. And don't worry, I've kept all the receipts. If you deny it, I'll show the evidence. Dylan's mother lunged toward me in anger. You planned this from the start to take my son's money. I pointed at a security camera above. Go ahead, hit me. If you do, I'll take another house from your family. Fuming, Dylan's family gave up and shuffled out, defeated. My cousin called security to escort them off the premises. Standing at the door, I watched as Dylan's mother tore Stella's wedding dress in rage. You ruined my son's wedding, you vixen, Stella retorted. What are you talking about? Your son proposed to me last night, begging me to be with him. The scene was a chaotic mess. I smiled, thinking this was just the start. Tomorrow, Dylan and Stella would find out I was their new boss. My parents came over holding my hands. Don't let this scumbag get away with it, sweetheart. We'll help you take revenge. Tears welled up in my eyes. My parents had opposed this marriage, and I had fought with them over Dylan. If they hadn't conceded, I might have been trapped in a miserable life. Mom, Dad, don't worry. I won't let anyone bully me. The next morning, I declined their offer to drive me to work. Avenging Dylan is one thing, but I want to experience the grassroots level of the company. If you take me, it'll blow my cover. When I arrived at the company, I knew I had made the right choice. A crowd had gathered, cheering. Let's congratulate Stella on her promotion to department manager. As Stella gloated about her supposed promotion, I observed silently, piecing things together. She noticed me standing behind the crowd and smirked. Miss Nora, what a surprise to see you here. I thought your family was wealthy. What brings you to work at our company? You weren't just bluffing yesterday, were you? Dylan chimed in smugly. Where's all that bravado from yesterday? Cat got your tongue now that Stella's your boss? Someone in the crowd cautiously asked. Stella, Dylan, do you know her? Stella rolled her eyes dramatically. Know her? She's the reason my boyfriend and I made it this far. As the chatter continued, the situation became clear. At the company, Dylan and Stella had been presenting themselves as a loving couple. Stella clung to Dylan's arm with a sugary smile, and I couldn't help but sigh. After the drama of yesterday, they were still acting like this? Impressive. Is she Dylan's admirer? Girls these days really are shameless. Someone muttered nearby. Imagine chasing after a man all the way to his workplace, not realizing how outclassed she is by Stella. Stella just graduated and she's already a department manager. I raised an eyebrow. Interesting. If I remembered correctly, the company rules required significant achievements to be promoted. Stella shouldn't have been eligible for a managerial position for at least 20 years. Something was definitely off. Ignoring their comments, I calmly spoke up. First, I'm not some new employee you're talking about. Second, if Stella's promotion is official, may I see the company's announcement? Everyone exchanged uneasy glances. Stella's claim of promotion was clearly just talk, with no proof to back it up. Just then, a portly man approached. This young lady, Stella, was recommended by me for the department manager position. He announced. The company is reviewing it, and I'm confident it's only a matter of time. I glanced at his name tag. He was Chester, the company's general manager. No wonder he sounded so confident. I smiled and pulled out a document from my bag. I'm afraid I have bad news. For now, I'll be serving as the department manager. Stella's face twisted in disbelief as she snatched the contract from me. Impossible! Someone must have pulled strings for you. How else could you become the manager? I smirked. Miss Stella, be careful with your accusations. For your information, I've received more education than you and have a couple more years of experience. If you're implying that I had help to get this position, what does that say about you and your ambitious claims? Turning to Chester, I added with a polite smile. I trust you'll handle the company's employees appropriately in the future. Otherwise, I may have to raise concerns with the board. Chester's expression darkened. Miss Nora, even if you were sent from headquarters, you don't have the authority to meddle in my management decisions. As for Stella, my recommendation was based on her performance, completely justified. The murmurs around us revealed the truth. Dylan had likely been used by Stella all along. I didn't press further. Manager Chester is absolutely right. I may have overstepped. Thinking I was conceding, Chester threw a smug glance at Stella before walking off. Stella approached me with a whisper. Even if you got in through connections, you can't compete with me. Then she raised her voice for all to hear. Nora, how about treating us to a nice meal after work? Such generosity from someone sent by headquarters. The crowd erupted in excitement. I've heard that restaurant costs a fortune. Hundreds of thousands for a single visit. Yeah, and you need to book a month in advance. Stella beamed triumphantly. Nora, you wouldn't go back on your word, would you? I nodded with a smile. I'll cover today's expenses, so order whatever you like. But this isn't just because I'm from headquarters. It's my way of encouraging hard work. Show results and I'll consider raises. As dusk fell, Stella was quick to shut down her computer. Nora, aren't you going to make the reservation? Or are you planning to use that as an excuse to back out? I raised my phone. No need for that. The reservation's already made. When we arrived at the restaurant, the waiter stopped us at the entrance. Stella smirked. If you couldn't make the reservation, just say so. This is embarrassing for the company. Ignoring her, I addressed the waiter. Please check again. The reservation is under my name. The waiter's expression shifted dramatically. That room is our owner's private space for hosting friends. If you're going to make up a number, at least be convincing. You don't look anything like our high-profile customers. I blinked, taken aback. My parents had assured me the staff knew I was the future owner of this restaurant. This shouldn't have happened. Stella seized the moment to mock me further. Nora, if you can't afford it, just admit it. Don't disgrace the company. I glanced at Stella's attire, then at my own, and couldn't help but smirk. Stella wears knockoffs. How can she possibly be wealthier than me? I observed Stella exchanging a look of approval with the waiter, and it hit me. This wasn't random. Stella had been waiting to embarrass me here all along. With a self-satisfied expression, Stella taunted, Since that's the case, why don't I treat everyone tonight instead? I signaled to a nearby waiter. Please get your manager. I made a reservation, but this waiter refuses to let me in. Stella scoffed. Nora, there's no need to drag this out. If you're trying to save face, we'd rather not join in your humiliation. Even the colleagues who had initially sided with me began voicing their dissatisfaction. She's just boasting. If she can't afford to treat us, she shouldn't have promised. I didn't even have time to pick up my kid for this. Listening to their complaints, I stayed silent, smiling calmly at the waiter. I hope you don't end up regretting your words. The waiter snorted. Regret? Hardly. My manager supports me. Even if you did book a room, I'd still find a way to keep you out. Just then, the restaurant manager rushed over. He waved the waiter aside and greeted me with a deferential tone. Boss, you should have let me know you were coming. This new hire clearly doesn't recognize you, but I'll handle her. The manager's single word, boss, sent shockwaves through the group. Everyone, especially the waiter, stared at me in disbelief. That's impossible. The waiter stammered. How could she own this restaurant? The manager shot her a withering glare. Didn't I tell you to familiarize yourself with our leadership? And now you've offended the owner. Apologize immediately. The waiter, now pale-faced, stammered, Boss, I'm so sorry. I didn't recognize you. I interrupted. Funny, you seemed very sure of yourself earlier. You said your manager would back you no matter what, and you'd stop me from entering. I'd like to know, why do you hold such hostility toward me? Or is someone behind this? The waiter faltered, her complexion paling further. Finally, she pointed a trembling finger at Stella. It was Stella. She knew I worked here and messaged me earlier to make things difficult for you. She promised to pay me 10,000 yen if I succeeded. Stella's face turned red with anger. What nonsense! I don't even know you. I smiled faintly. If that's true, then you won't mind me firing her. Manager, ensure her salary is settled before she leaves. Everyone exchanged knowing looks. I could see in their eyes that Stella's facade was beginning to crack. By the end of the night, I suspected her secrets would be completely unraveled. The next morning, Dylan confronted me outside the office. Nora, why didn't you tell me you own the delicious restaurant? I smirked. I was going to tell you after our wedding, but since you're no longer in the picture, I didn't think it was necessary. Dylan's face twisted in anger. It's just a fancy restaurant. What's the big deal? Besides, Stella is the chairman's daughter. Really? I shot back. If she's so wealthy, why are you still chasing after me? Same old Dylan, always eyeing what's on the table while wanting what's in the pot. Dylan's retort faltered, and with a parting jab, he stormed off. This weekend is my engagement party with Stella. Let's see if you can still talk big after you're fired. His words gave me pause. When did Stella become my parents' daughter? Something didn't add up. So this why, guys? At the office, I noticed a dramatic change. The same colleagues who had mocked Stella the day before were now gathered around her, showering her with compliments. She's the chairman's daughter. I didn't expect her background to be so impressive. Stella, you have to put in a good word for us. Stella caught sight of me and smirked. I can't take all the credit. Nora, the owner of the delicious restaurant, deserves recognition too. The colleagues exchanged disdainful glances in my direction. How does that compare to Stella's background? Her family's company basically controls the city. You'd be stupid to cross her. I almost laughed. Their attitudes had done a complete 180 overnight. Suspicious, I checked Stella's social media and found the source of the misunderstanding. A photo of my father's car. She had captioned it, "In this world, only parents truly care for us." Realizing they'd mistaken my father for hers, I thought, don't you have your own parents, Stella? Why take mine? I decided to let her play out her charade until the weekend engagement party. Stella interpreted my silence as fear and taunted, apologize now, and I might let my family spare you. I rolled my eyes. Forgotten last night's events already? Want me to remind you? And by the way, your outfit is so last year. Where's the latest fashion, Miss Eris? Caught off guard, Stella stammered, just wait. You'll see this weekend. A nearby colleague quickly interjected. Nora, you don't understand Stella's unique style. She's always ahead of the curve. I smiled, knowing the clock was ticking on Stella's lies. I nearly burst out laughing. It was hard to tell if this female colleague was here to defend Stella or inadvertently help me. Sure enough, Stella's face darkened as she snapped, Mia, what's that supposed to mean? If you don't understand fashion, don't make random comments. Be careful or I'll dock your pay. And you, Nora, I won't let my mom and dad let you off the hook. I responded coolly. I'm not sure whether your family will spare me or not, but I do know one thing. You're currently working under me. Threatening your superior isn't wise. Consider this your warning, and your performance bonus for the month is canceled. I'm sure our young lady won't mind losing such a small amount. Stella's face twisted in anger, but she forced a smile, her gritted teeth betraying her rage. As if I'd care about such petty money. Before leaving work on Friday, Stella strutted over to my desk and smugly declared, "In the end, I'll still come out on top. Dylan will marry me." I sneered. "If you're willing to pick up garbage, that's your business." "I'm not interested. You two should stay together forever and stop dragging others into your mess," Stella retorted with a smirk. "You probably don't know this, but Dylan's being promoted to vice president of the company. What will you use to fight us then?" I watched her leave, her confidence bordering on delusion, and chuckled to myself. Long before I ended things with Dylan, I had already started planning my revenge. Dylan believed his promotion was thanks to Stella's family, and Stella thought being with Dylan would guarantee her an easy life. They were a match made in delusional heaven. I decided to let them savor their imaginary success for one more day. Tomorrow, they'd be tasting rock bottom. Tea? The next morning, I timed my arrival perfectly so my father could drive me to the hotel where Stella and Dylan's engagement party was taking place. When we arrived, the entire company had already gathered, eager to make a good impression. "Stella, I heard the chairman is coming today. You must put in a good word for us," one colleague gushed. Stella waved them off with feigned humility. "My dad's too busy to attend. We'll talk about these things after Dylan and I are married." Meanwhile, someone with sharp eyes spotted my father's license plate. "Stella, isn't that the chairman's car? It seems he does care about you after all." Stella's confidence wavered. "I already told you my dad isn't coming today. Stop bringing it up." Dylan, sensing something was off, leaned in and whispered, "Stella, don't you recognize that license plate?" I stepped out of the car, amused by the scene unfolding before me. Stella looked utterly baffled. Why should I recognize some random car's license plate? I approached and said pointedly, "Our chairman's daughter doesn't know her own father's car?" Strange. Gasps rippled through the crowd as everyone turned to me. "Nora, you're the chairman's daughter?" Stella tried to fight back. "That's impossible. How could she be the chairman's daughter? Who's to say she didn't steal that car?" Her voice faltered as my father stepped out of the car behind me, his face stern. "Young lady, I'd advise you to watch your words. Nora is my daughter, and it's perfectly normal for a father to drive his own child. She's no thief." Dylan, his face pale, scrambled to salvage the situation. "Chairman, I'm so sorry. My family member spoke out of turn. I'll discipline her. But about my promotion to vice president," my father glanced at me knowingly, clearly understanding this was all part of my plan. "Dylan, do you think betraying my daughter would still land you a vice president position? Report to HR on Monday, collect your final paycheck, and start looking for a new job." Dylan froze, unable to process what had just happened. The crowd stood in stunned silence, terrified of becoming the next target. I stared into Dylan's eyes, curious to hear his thoughts as I had before. To my surprise, I couldn't. Relief washed over me. Was this a sign that I'd finally broken free from him? Desperate, Dylan secretly slipped a room key into my hand as I walked toward the hotel. I looked at it in disgust and tossed it into the trash without a second thought. Eero. Inside the hotel, Dylan's mother spotted me and sneered, "Isn't this the girl my son rejected? How dare you show up at my son's engagement party? My future daughter-in-law is the chairman's daughter, after all. Good thing my son didn't marry you." Dylan frantically gestured for his mother to stop, but she continued, "I hear you work at Stella's company. If you forgive my son's debts, I might consider letting you stay employed. Otherwise, you'll face the consequences." I cut in before Dylan could speak. "Auntie, you're as greedy as ever. First, you'll repay every cent you owe me. I trust you've received the court summons by now. Second, I genuinely hope Dylan and Stella stay together forever, sparing others their harm. And as for my job, don't worry about me. Focus on your son's career instead." Dylan finally pulled his mother aside, whispering frantically, "Mom, Nora is the chairman's daughter. We were wrong about her all along." Dylan's mother turned ghostly pale and stormed over to Stella, slapping her hard. "You liar, you conned me. Give back the money I gave you for the dowry." As I listened to the chaos, I pieced together the story. Stella, posing as my father's daughter, had swindled a 1 million yen dowry from Dylan's family. They'd even sold their house to cover it, dreaming of moving into a luxurious villa with Stella. That dream had just crumbled. In their heated scuffle, they bumped into Chester, uncovering yet another shocking secret. Stella's undergarment unexpectedly fell from Chester's suit jacket, leaving Dylan unable to contain himself as he launched into a fight with Chester. In mere moments, the well-orchestrated engagement party devolved into chaos, with guests pulling out their phones to record the fiasco. Meanwhile, I sat off to the side, casually snacking on sunflower seeds and thoroughly enjoying the show. After what felt like ages, the police finally arrived. I couldn't help but chuckle when I noticed Stella's partially exposed bald spot. Pointing an accusing finger at me, Stella shrieked, "Officer, it's all her fault. If not for her, my engagement party wouldn't have ended up like this. Arrest her immediately." What luck. The officer leading the team happened to be my cousin, who had missed the chance to teach Dylan a lesson during my earlier encounter due to being on duty. He had often vented his frustration about it in the family group chat, so running into Dylan again today must have felt like poetic justice. I exchanged a glance with my cousin and feigned tears. "Officer, when I was marrying this scumbag, this woman disrupted my wedding. Now they're together and trying to frame me. I'm truly the victim here." Dylan's mother, seeing the officer as her last hope, dramatically collapsed to the ground. "This woman is a con artist. She scammed our family out of $1 million. Officer, you must help us recover it." My cousin, his face filled with disdain, replied bluntly, "Shouting at me won't solve anything. All of you come to the station and provide statements." As the chaotic group was escorted away, I discreetly gave my cousin a thumbs up. The next update on Dylan and Stella came through my cousin's report in the family group chat. After arriving at the station, Stella began loudly claiming she was pregnant and demanding that Dylan take responsibility. However, Dylan's mother vehemently insisted that Chester was the father, sparking a public argument at the station's entrance. Just as my family was making progress in having Stella repay the million she'd scammed, we discovered Dylan had secretly married her. This left his family reeling in shock. To complicate matters, Stella's financial troubles were far from over. She had used the $1 million from Dylan's family to pay off some debts, but still owed a significant amount to foreign lenders. I replied in the group chat, "Well done," before tossing my phone aside to return to my peaceful afternoon binge-watching a show. This ordeal left me with a sobering realization. Love can be incredibly unreliable. If you're not careful, a man will betray you without a second thought.